It had to happen this way. Today we enter Jerusalem with Jesus. As he humbly enters the city, followed by his disciples, surrounded by a crowd of followers, the ones his life has touched. We too are there, as the road is covered with palms and olive branches and the hosannas ring out. It is a joyful, simple welcome, a humble greeting honoring Jesus with what we have. Jesus enters Jerusalem willingly, knowing his end is imminent. The days of being an active presence, of manifesting God's love for humanity through teaching, healing, and preaching have come to an end. Yet he continues to show us the way to true relationship with God. He holds up for us things we need to embrace. He has entered Jerusalem for the Passover celebration, the remembrance of God's loving acts to free the Hebrew people from enslavement in Egypt. The authorities are actively seeking a way to silence him. Jesus has gone against the grain of proper society, cutting across social boundaries. The authorities want to be rid of him. They look for ways to do away with him. The story unfolds as Jerusalem and the people prepare for the Passover. And as the Passover approaches, Jesus is prepared. At the home of Simon, the leper in Bethany, at the table a woman approaches with an alabaster jar of costly ointment of nard. Breaking it open, she anoints him as she pours it on his head, offering what she has to honor him. The others become upset at such an extravagant gesture. Jesus intercedes on her behalf, pointing out she has done what she is able. She has anointed his body beforehand for burial. It is an act of selfless giving, kindness, love. Judas, caught up within himself, makes a pact with the chief priest to betray Jesus. As the festival unfolds, the disciples gather for their Passover meal, a ritual long held as a remembrance of God's providence and saving acts, as their ancestors ate their last meal in Egypt and were led out by Moses across the Red Sea into the desert. As the disciples eat, they remember the ancient story and their ancestors being freed from oppression, from slavery. Jesus stuns and upsets the disciples by saying that one of them will betray him. Surely not I, they each say. They have journeyed with him, walked away from their families, work and lives to follow him. And within the meal, Jesus speaks 3 times of the one who will betray him, and the disciples deny they would ever do so. Then Jesus does the most ordinary thing. Taking a loaf of bread, he blesses, breaks, and shares it, saying, "Take, this is my body." And he does the same with the wine after they have drunk all drunk from the cup. Jesus says, "This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for many." After supper, Jesus and the disciples go to the Garden of Gethsemane. Judas slips away. Jesus is betrayed. Jesus submits to what is to take place. Each step of the way, through Judas' kiss, Jesus' silence and confession of being the Son of Man, the Messiah, through this process of self-emptying, revealed in his words and in his silence as he is accused, condemned by the crowds, flogged, mocked, stripped, shunned and crucified, even taunted. Jesus commits. and submits himself to God. It was as he hung on the cross, the atmosphere changed. The world becomes dark. Jesus cries out, "Where are you? Why have you forsaken me?" Lost for a moment, perhaps in the pain, perhaps in the shame. Then he breathed his last, and the veil in the temple is torn in two. The veil between heaven and earth is torn open. In his death, heaven and earth are reunited. At the very heart of the cross, heaven and earth come together. The challenge of being in relationship with God is united with the challenge of being in relationship with all God's people in love. Jesus emptied himself, submitted, became vulnerable and exposed, broken for each of us, to be drawn into God's loving embrace. So God's love, compassion, glory could be revealed in the world through us. It is a complex relationship, a complex story, filled with many stories, signs, and symbols, designed to draw us closer to God, to draw us into reflecting on our faith. Where do we turn away from Jesus? Where do we betray him? Where do we turn him into the authorities? Where in our lives do we anoint his head with oil, consecrate him as the Lord of our heart, loving him? Or do we find ourselves with the ones least likely to be anywhere? Are we gazing at him from the foot of the cross? Are we standing with the women just a little ways away? Or have we scattered like the disciples in fear? This story draws us closer to God. It tears the fabric of our heart that we might grow in faith, in hope, in love. In our lives, we each experience the things that Jesus experienced: betrayal, denial, being turned in. And hopefully, we won't experience crucifixion. But each one of us will experience the story as it speaks to us today. And tomorrow we will hear it afresh. And next year, and for the rest of our lives, we will hear and be moved and be changed by this story. That is why we walk it each year. And we strive to find our way with Jesus as we grow and change, as the world grows and changes, as the needs grow and change. We must strive to be in the place of being open, of being broken. And there are moments where we should act, and there are moments where we should be silent, and moments when we should submit to God and God's grace. It had to be this way.